Well, hi, everyone. It's great to see you all joining from all over the world. Welcome to part 2 of the Extreme Tech Challenge category final for the health tech category. My name is Victoria Slivkoff, and I am your host today. First, some background on XTC for those who are new to us. Extreme Tech Challenge, or XTC, is the world's largest tech innovation ecosystem for making the world a radically better place. And we think ourselves as a launching pad for the disruptive innovations that can power a more sustainable, equitable, healthy, inclusive, and prosperous world. And how we're organized is that we're at the nexus of the global community of entrepreneurs, corporations, VCs, academia, philanthropists, policymakers, innovators, and change makers working together to solve the grand challenges of our time. The UN Sustainable Development Goals serves as a framework for our 7 competition tracks: ag tech, food and water, clean tech and energy, ed tech, enabling tech, fintech, healthcare, and mobility and smart cities. Not only is this the right thing to do, investing in purpose-driven tech also contributes to better business results. XTC was founded by Yang Sung and Bill Tai, and it's so great to have you here, Yang, joining us today. 2 Silicon Valley-based investors, corporate executives, and entrepreneurs themselves who have invested in and built multiple billion-dollar companies that are household names today. And they're passionate about their mission to empower founders and building innovative technologies that can improve the world. I don't know, Young, if you want to say a few words. This is very impromptu.
Yeah, this is impromptu, but yeah, we really appreciate the joining all of us. We're really excited that we have this final, and this is a really exceptional year. Given difficult pandemic year, we've been seeing even bigger increase in our interest. So looking forward to hearing some great impact investment companies.
Great, thanks, Young. So follow them on social media and check out Young's video interview series, The Next Wave, for his thoughts and practical advice for founders and investors alike. Through participating, exceptional startups such as the companies pitching today gain global visibility, access to capital, corporate strategic partnerships, mentorship, and develop relationships and friendships that would carry them far into the future. This year, over 3,700 startups applied from almost 100 countries, and 80 finalists were selected by over 300 judges across our 21 regional competitions around the world and through open application. And these 80 exceptional global finalists all have emerged as a top 2% from a very competitive pool. This is an amazing achievement, and all the startup finalists are winners in their own right. So they should be really, really proud of that. And here's a look at that cohort of 2021 global finalists. I encourage you to check them out. To learn more, head to our website, extremetechchallenge.org. And here's a look at the entire finalist cohort for the health tech category. So yesterday you heard from the first 9 companies that pitched. So please head to our YouTube channel later this week, and we'll have the video recording up from the previous session, which will be uploaded by then. And today is part 2 of the pitch session for this category, and I'm so excited for you to hear from 10 exceptional companies shown here. And before we get to the pitch, I'd like to welcome our esteemed judging panel. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Amit Isola, Managing Director at Wenxiang Healthcare, Eduardo Calvia. He's the chairman of Calvia Holding, his family office investment, and he's also the head and creative director of Rene Calvia, the oldest European luxury shoe brand in the world, and Ray Johnson, operating partner at Bessemer Venture Partners. So now I'd like to turn it over to the judges for a few words on your particular interest in the health tech category. Amit, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Victoria. Yes, so I'm a managing director at Wenxiang Healthcare Investments. We are a digital health-focused fund focusing in on the early stage venture. So we come in late seed rounds all the way through to pre-IPO, but really our focus is late seed, Series A, Series B. And then within digital health, our focus is on solutions that enable the decentralization of healthcare. So remote patient monitoring, care management, and outcomes tracking outside of the 4 walls of the hospital are really the types of technologies we're looking at today. Although we are generally agnostic under the digital health umbrella in terms of which technologies we like to invest in.
Great, thank you, welcome. And back for day 2, Eduardo, you'd like to say a few words?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, everyone. And the healthcare has been in the history of my family. So I have two sides of my family working in shoes. So we start to take care about not only fashion shoes, but either medical shoes. My experience started in this matter from really the manual manufacturing of the shoes, arriving for my experience directly in Ivory Coast, in Burkina Faso, in Africa, where we used to keep for free and build an hospital for free for population over there. I'm the founder of a co-investment fund based in Silicon Valley. We have many investment in this kind of activities. So it's a pleasure to be here and trying to keep my advantage and my knowledge for helping whoever is starting to do better things for population everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Eduardo. And Ray, welcome back.
Hi, thank you, Victoria. Thanks for the introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here. And again, today we have a very global audience, which is great. Bessemer Venture Partners is the oldest VC in the United States, more than 107 years old, and we have a very large healthcare practice. And I think the last year and a half or so has reminded us how important healthcare is. And especially healthcare for the world. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations from some of these great innovative solutions and really glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And here, now we're going to get to the pitches. So this is the pitch order today. Let's start the presentation. First up, let's welcome Zcare, a company that is digitizing healthcare information in Indonesia. Welcome to the stage.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jody. We are from Zcare, Indonesian company in health tech startups who is our venture is digitizing Indonesian healthcare. The main purpose of what we do is that we like to solve this kind of problem that we see every day in Indonesian hospitals where people are suffering through the healthcare journey. Also that we have a very low doctor penetrations, only 4 to cover 10,000 populations. So we came with the product and solutions, what we call the Zcare. It's an electronic medical record level 7, with also complementing modules to equip and support the hospital and clinics, while we are also prototyping the mobile apps to restore and the medical data for the patient. Again, our business model, currently we are B2B focused. We serve hospitals, we serve clinics with multiple payment options. And in the near future, we will go B2B2C with our Zcare Lite modules and also the mobile apps for the patient. Going forward, we are also preparing to set up the health information exchange when the EMR level 7 ecosystems are big enough in Indonesia to get all these medical data on the go for patient convenience. On the other end, Indonesia is a very big market. We have 3,000 hospitals, 9,000 clinics, and 270 million people, which really having the lack of a proper healthcare service. Total addressable market, we can see that around 1.1 billion a year for all these segments. Again, during this COVID, we enjoyed momentum. We served on the growth during the last 1 year. We booked about $1 million contract, $200,000 revenue, whereas we've been used for the 200,000 medical data and implemented in 81 hospitals and clinics across the nation. Compared to our competitors, I think we are the first Indonesian company who reached this maturity of technology. We also provide these solutions in affordable price for every healthcare facilities. Again, on last year, we've been partnering with big corporates such as Telkomsel, Ministry of Health, Indonesian Medical Research Institute to assure that we are serving to improve the healthcare together with the bigger corporates. On the other end, we also participated in several accelerators such as the Draper University and UNDP, and also Sinhan Futures from Korea. We'll be joining as well the Iterative Summer Batch 2021 on the next July. These are the hospitals and clinics that we've been serving so far, and we hope to add more the names on the nations. On the end, We also targeting to increase our hospital to 100 hospital and clinics by this year, and created more than 500,000 medical record data for Indonesian people. Our mission is in line with the SDGs, where we are trying to provide a good health with a better innovation infrastructures and reduce inequality of healthcare access so everyone can enjoy a proper healthcare service. A little bit of our background. My name is Jody. I have 10 years experience in banking, whereas my colleagues, the co-founders, Jesse, who also have the experience in hospitals. Meanwhile, our CTO is the one who built the technology and system from bottom to top of the software and the apps. And thank you. You have any questions? Looking forward to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Now I'm going to bring you on stage and turn it over to the judges. Hang on, let me get the, okay, Eduardo, you're there. Actually, Shell, can you do that? Can you bring the, now your host, can you bring the judges onto the stage and Jody?
Yep, it'll take a second.
Okay.
Start with questions while we're doing that. The first question is, what kind of feedback do you get regarding the main positive outcome from this device, from this tool?
Okay. So the main positive outcome will be increase the efficiencies in business operations within the hospital and clinics. That's one thing. Secondly, we get rid of papers, so we reduce anything that risk of medication errors like written prescriptions, the drug interaction, etc. And then lastly, the powerful tools will be that we are increasing the rate of claim acceptance from the hospital to the government insurance. In Indonesia, our healthcare is relying 70% turnover to the government insurance coverage, whereas we have very high chance of rejections due to that chaotic things in documentations. So I think most of our clients, they can increase the claim acceptance rate up to 95% from their total billings to the insurance institutions.
Okay, so mainly administrative advantages. What about patient care advantages? Any feedback on those who are using it regarding patient care?
Let me help with that question.
Okay,
my name is Lucy. I'm the CEO of the company, and Jody is my partner. So actually, we got a lot of feedback from the doctors, because in Indonesia, the maturity levels and also there are some lack of digital literacy among the healthcare givers. And initially, it was a hard process for them to accept to digitalize all the process. But after the COVID, now now they start to think about the digitalization because they are afraid of paper now, and we got a lot of good feedback. And we also providing on the cloud EMR for the COVID-19 patients from the doctors across Indonesia. So and we got also the good feedback that it make their job easier, and we can have the integrated data for the government to take action regarding this COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I can ask the next set of questions. Could you just give us just a little bit of background on the landscape in Indonesia? Because obviously in the US, EMR systems are fairly commonplace at this point. How many health systems or hospitals in Indonesia actually have a digital health system, and how many are still using paper? So that's my first question. And my second question is, you mentioned that your price point is cheaper, and that's one of your competitive advantages. How much cheaper are you than other competitors, such as, say, an Athena Health, which was on one of your slides?
Okay. All right. So actually, in Indonesia, there are more than 3,000 hospitals, and based on the our Ministry of Health, the hospital that implement the proper electronic medical record is less than 1%. So that means even less than 30 that they have a proper EMR on place. So that's why I think we are the first Indonesian company that reached the maturity that support the health information exchange among the healthcare facilities. And So most of the rest of the hospital is a very, very traditional, where the doctors writing everything on the paper, and it's very hard to get the meaningful use or sometimes trace back to see the history of the patients. And for the pricing, I think compared to the one that's been penetrating Indonesian market is TechCrunch, actually, not the Athena Health, but we are adopting a lot of things from all of them. And the pricing for the TechCrunch is around $2 million per 2 years, per year. So sorry. And for us, it's the total package of the system for 2 years, 3 years, it roughly around $500K. So compared to the $2 million, $3 million for with the TechCrunch. So that's our pricing point. And we also have a payment schemes that Jody mentioned earlier, that we have a monthly installment. So the hospital can pay a very little compared to the revenue. So it feels like operating expense instead of the capital expense for the hospitals.
Thank you. Oh, Eduardo, you're on mute.
Sorry, Jesse, please, can you let us know which is the biggest issue or the biggest problem or the things that you are trying to solve in the development of the company in the next 12 to 24 months? So considering the growth that are declared, but what is the expectation of the main issue that you need to pass through?
Okay, so the main issue is actually, there are two main issues. The first is the readiness of the human resources. I mean, like, as I mentioned earlier, the digital literacy among the healthcare givers in Indonesia, compared even to our neighbors such as Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand, it's still below the average. That's the first problem when we try to digitize it. And the second problem is COVID. Even though it also helped the growth, the adoptions, to lowering the rejections from the healthcare givers, but the COVID also make us hard to traveling between the sites and to penetrate the larger market at this point. So we mostly meet on Zoom, but as you can see, all the traditional hospital, they still require us sometimes, a lot of times, to face-to-face meeting. So that could be the one of the obstacles that we have to find the solutions for.
Good, thank you.
Jesse, I have another question here. One of the big challenges we see in the US as it relates to EMR systems is you can have, say, Epic or Cerner implemented across a health system of 20 hospitals. But the issue is that if a patient goes between two different hospitals, you can't actually track the patient because one instance of Epic doesn't talk to the other instance of Epic at a different hospital. There's a lack of interoperability. Do you address that problem with your solution?
Yes, that's exactly what we are doing. We are building for the future ventures. Actually, the one that we try to build is the interconnections between the healthcare facilities in Indonesia. That's why when we go to hospitals, when we have a contract with the hospitals, we already say to them that this data will be interconnected with all the other healthcare facility to provide a better safety and convenience for your patients. So you have to know that and agree with that terms. That's really actually the point what we are trying to build with Zcare.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any more questions? Great, thank you, Jesse and Jody, for your presentation. Next,
you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Next up, I'd like to welcome the team from Sunfox, a medtech R&D lab that develops portable and affordable medical devices for cardiac health screening and diagnosis.
Victoria, could we get
of course,
a 1 minute break in between each of the
please.
companies? Okay, thank you.
And presenter, do you want to get your screen share ready while the judges finish scoring? Great, thank you, Rajat.
I'm okay.
Amit and Ray?
All set
Let's
here.
give it
Thank you. Good to go. Yeah, I think we can just do 1 minute and that should be fine.
Okay, great. Please begin. Mhm. Okay, the floor is yours, Rajat.
Hi. Yeah, Victoria, is my screen visible?
Yeah, I can see your screen share. Looks good.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Rajat, founder of Sunfox Technologies. We are based out of India. We have developed world's smallest and the smartest cardiac diagnostic tool, which gives hospital-grade heart diagnosis on smartphone in less than a day's meal cost, and with the same ease we use a pulse oximeter today at home. Taking you to the global problem, cardiovascular disease and heart attacks are the reason for most deaths worldwide. Especially in this pandemic time, people suffering from cardiac disease and heart attacks have grown immensely. Cardiovascular disease have taken 3 times more life than COVID-19 in the last year. So this is how primary diagnostic tool looks like. It is called ECG or EKG, electrocardiogram. And this is a gold standard tool which is required to diagnose, primarily any kind of cardiac abnormality, cardiovascular disease or heart attacks. And this is called a 12-lead ECG machine. And bang, this is what we have built, this tiny beautiful device, which is smaller than your keychain and lighter than your keychain actually. It gives you a 12-lead cardiac diagnostic, which is required to diagnose a heart attack or a cardiac abnormality just on the smartphone, and that too without compromising the accuracy and accuracy and amount of information required by the cardiologist or a doctor to take a decision. We're making it much more easier to be used by a non-medical person, and also the reports given by Spandan are AI crafted, and you don't need any internet to get an instant report. You can simply put your phone into a flight mode event, and you can get a AI crafted report in such a way that a layman or a non-medical person can also understand that result. For a doctor, it gives a lot more data than a standard machine. On top of the same, the clinical format, which is identically, accepted by them. So it is a point of care device. In the same segment, we see, blood glucometer, a thermometer, or a pulse oximeter today. The same segment we are trying to tap. It is for the same user levels. For a cardiac patient, it is fit for a self-diagnosis or a remote, consultation. For a physician or a clinic, it is a device to do instant diagnosis there without sending the patient to the diagnosis center. For a cardiologist or a cardiac surgeon, it is a fit to do remote post-operative care so that they can actually reduce the number of visits to the hospital of a patient post-surgeries. And also for the hospital, it solves the mobility issue of the current ECG machines, so that it can be available to each ward and each floor. So meet Spandan, we are bringing cardiac diagnostic closer to the people, specifically when they need it the most. This is the smallest tool, as I mentioned, which give you as good results as the standard machine with the 100 reduced weight and the size, and one-time setup cost, which is like 1/50th of the standard one, and per test cost, which is as low as 20 cents a test. And this is just the whole setup. You don't have to spend a lot again and again. It's like one time buy for, and we solve the whole problem. We're on a mission to save millions life from preventable deaths which goes undiagnosed every year with this tiny beautiful device. And just since the size is a fraction of what a traditional machine is, so we also lead to solid electronic waste reduction in a significant way. So meet Spandan, this is a patented technology. Not only taking your electrocardiogram, we can detect 40 plus heart dysfunctions, and this tiny heart meter gives you whether you need a medical attention or not. And you can share all the reports. These are the few tests which are available on the smartphone. And what all you can do with these tests, so you can record the test when the symptoms appear, which is actually critical, because cardiovascular disease are episodic in nature, and it is critical for a doctor to see the exact report when the symptoms appear. You can do the routine monitoring. You can do the diagnosis in the case of chest pain or the physical symptoms. Continuous monitoring, it converts your phone into a bedside monitor for continuous monitoring. And on top of it, you can also do cardiac stress coping ability, and HRV assessment in a very easy way. Talking about the traction, we have successfully validated it with all of the market segments, and recorded more than 1 million heartbeats so far with 20,000 plus patients. We are present across 250 plus clinics across India, and with more than 1,000 plus, 1,200 plus deployments. And we are the highest rated electrocardiography machine so far. We give the benchmark quality in less than your 1 day's meal cost, with the highest accuracy and amount of medical information which is required, most amount of medical information in the portable ECG segment. And we are further bringing it down to lesser than an average haircut cost, to every home. These are some of the glimpses you can see. It is truly developed for the rural and the last mile deployments, and least medical, you can say, experts are actually using. And these are some of the testimonials. We have been even appreciated by Honorable Prime Minister of India. And these are some of the reviews. We are the highest rated electrocardiography machine as of today. And we place ourselves into the clinical diagnostic space, which goes for the masses with the highest medical amount of information as compared with others. And apart from the current product, we have also evolved the current product further. This is specifically for the COVID pandemic. We have created world's smallest ICU monitor, which converts any bed to an ICU level monitoring bed less than 200 USD within 5 minutes. And these are all the parameters which are critical to be monitored for the COVID patient with the same technology. Talking about the unit economics, even at the current scale, we are we are having huge gross margins, and which again, have a significant share at a 100x scale too. The team consists hardcore medical professionals with rich experience in the field, and including technology. And I'm also the technology incubation manager turned entrepreneur with my tech people along. And we have been backed by the great people in their field from GE Healthcare, Stanford, and others. Some of the awards we have been appreciated by World Economic Forum, Gates Foundation, National Health Authority, and a lot of other organizations. Some of the features. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajat. Judges.
Yeah, I can kick this one off. Rajat, nice presentation. This is actually pretty interesting. I'll keep my first question very simple, and then we can pass it over to the other judges. I've been looking at a few companies in this space recently, and most of them that I've seen that are very portable still have the leads. So you'll have a 6 lead or a portable 12 lead that's much lighter in weight and profile. How are you able to gather a high quality signal without the leads?
No, we do use the leads.
You do use the leads. Okay.
Yeah. And just to address the question, how we are different. So this is just an anatomy of heart. We cover all the axes of the heart, which is not covered by the single lead or the touch-based or leadless systems. So this is how we actually gather the highest quality of information, which is you can say exactly same to what you see in a hospital.
Yes, some folks. My question was similar to the Amit one, and I really have seen in the last years many, as you have described, competitors and something like that. And what is the scale that you are imagining to have in terms of quantity, and consequently, how will decrease and how fast it will decrease the cost of the device? Because it's a business that is based on a scale making
Okay.
good scale. So is the industrial aspect has some important
Okay.
aspect.
So, what happens, what we are doing in the product to do the significant cost reduction. So we are using all of the computation power of a smartphone, okay, without without having the physical electronics for the computation on any side of it. So 80% of the part is happening inside a smartphone application. And if you look at the hardware, there is no battery on board, there is no wireless component, there is not even a single button on the device. So there is just a PCB which connects with a cable and transmits the data to your smartphone. So from the cost side, we can further go down and actually reduce the cost significantly. It's like you can have a ECG machine with the same quality, less than a cost of a thermometer.
So the device is really just a set of sensors and a transmitter.
No, so the device is just kind of a set of filters and amplifiers. That's it, nothing else. So
Yeah,
it is
okay.
just, taking the data from the chest, converting into a readable format and passing into
Right.
the phone. Rest of the
Right.
job is done by the phone.
All the
Since we're
all the
carrying a
processing,
computer in our pocket, yeah.
all the processing occurs on the phone.
Yes, so we are already carrying a computer in our pocket. So why can't we use all of its beautiful computation power to do these wonders?
And I might have missed it, but what's the connectivity to the cloud? Is that
Yeah.
done through the cloud provider for the phone, or do you have a separate cloud?
Okay, so this is a kind of plug-and-play system for existing cloud providers, EHRs, EMRs, and on top of it, we provide local data to the user. So every report generates just less than 10 KB, in each report. So even in a few MBs, you can store thousands of reports, right? So the user can keep them locally. They want to share them on their personal clouds as well. We also offer the services if they want, or if we are integrating it with any of the cloud or EHR platforms. So it is kind of a no-code plug-and-play system. So you can even share your report just with a WhatsApp or a Gmail or any other communication method. We are not limiting user for that.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question about the business model. Who ends up paying for this? Is it a direct pay by the patient? I know insurance works differently in India, but I was kind of curious as to ultimately who's going to be the one footing the bill.
Okay, so we have split it and repackaged the technology in 3 different ways to get 3 different products. The first one is an individual cardiac patient who are at high risk, who are underwent any kind of cardiac intervention surgeries. So they can buy the device once and keep it at home. There is no recurring cost attached with this. Secondly, we integrate it with all of these EHR platforms, digital healthcare platforms. So we charge them pay per uses, as per pay, which is as low as like 10 cents, 20 cents based on the volume. So they don't have to pay hardware cost or any upfront cost, so they can pay pay per uses. Thirdly, we give a rental model which is as low as $20 a month without paying again any upfront cost, which is slightly advanced version to this. And they can actually keep it a number of devices again based on the volume. And both are the recurring models.
If there are no other questions, I can. I'm sorry if I missed this, but what is the market size, the potential addressable market size?
Okay, so if I talk about from the number of patients side, so as per WHO data, there have been more than 442 million patients in 2017, right? Reported by WHO. So even in India itself, in India alone, there are more than 20 lakh and 2 million deaths every year just due to the undiagnosed cardiac disease and related to the cardiovascular disease. It's a big, more than 25 billion market for point of care cardiac, space.
Okay, no more questions? Great. Thank you, Rajat. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll give it a
Thanks,
minute.
everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Next up, we will welcome Nanomedic Technologies, which is an innovative nanotechnology company focused on wound care. Judges, are we ready to go?
All set, thank you.
Okay, great, please start.
So hi everyone, it's really an honor to be here today as part of the Extreme Challenge finalist. When we talk about healthcare, it is really striking to see the huge leap medical fields have taken in the last few decades. And we see many of them in those speeches that we hear today, and probably you heard yesterday. So like the flip to minimal invasive and robotic assisted surgeries, or the way treatment of heart disease evolved with the introduction of catheter-based interventions during the 70s, absolutely game changers. And you can talk about cancer, diabetic, imaging, data, etc., etc. But I want to take you into my world, into the wound care market. And it is really interesting because for some reason, wound care is still considered a conservative and somewhat old-fashioned, with fabric bandages used to cover wounds, with frequent daily painful changes, ripping off the tissue over and over again, exposing the wound to infection, and actually disrupting the healing process. So clearly and unsurprisingly, uncovering a multitude of unmet needs in the wound care market today. We talk about immense pain, discomfort, very traumatic healing process with poor quality of life for patients. And on the other hand, frustration, high cost, and high workload on the medical team and healthcare system. So my name is Dr. Chen Barak, and I'm the CEO of Nanomedic Technologies. And we are here to challenge those basic principles and disrupt the way wounds are being treated in thousands of hospitals, clinics, and homes around the world as we speak, actually, on a daily basis. So let me just share with you a very quick video that will show you what we do about it.
The spin care system is the first healing commercialized electrospinning portable solution. It is a handheld and fully personalized wound healing medical system. It is coupled with a disposable single-patient polymer-based sterile solution ampule. SpinCare is the only system that prints electrospun healing fibers directly on the wound for a total wound healing therapy. It is a no-contact and one-time application, which reduces risk for infection, allows for early showers, mobility is not impaired, and prevents painful redressing. Finally, it promotes wound healing by mimicking the human tissue structure with excellent scarring results. It is incredibly easy to use by any member of the medical team, anytime, anywhere. The SpinCare is printing a thin healing fibrous matrix on the patient's wound from a distance and in real time. The electrospun healing fibrous matrix provides a breathable protective layer over the wound, preventing bacteria from entering. Join us on the SpinCare journey.
So, So what you have seen is actually the SpinCare system. You have seen it in action. Is the first and only commercially available portable electrospinning system for wound therapy. It's a handheld device, and it's operated with a disposable single-use ampoule, just like basically the Nespresso model. The SpinCare has already been used in more than 300 patients across Israel and Europe, printing in real time, in situ, a nanofibrous matrix that biomimics the structure of the human tissue, basically creating a temporary skin layer. With one-time application, the matrix remains on the wound throughout the healing process, with no need to remove or replace, allowing daily showers, really regular showers, free mobility, excellent healing, while dramatically improving the patient's quality of life. It does sound a little bit like science fiction. Yes, it does remind us of the medical Reagan. Yes, it does, but this is reality. Nanomedic is heading towards the market, introducing its first product into this $42 billion market. We have regulatory clearances. We recently launched the SpinCare in Europe, and most importantly, we are working on our deep pipeline of products containing embedded healing enhancing additives to address complex and hard to heal wounds and every skin condition, basically, taking advantage of its platform technology. Which you can see here, for example, antibacterial cells, collagen, antibiotics, pain relief, a lot of opportunities, a lot of horizons here. We invite you to join our journey, an excellent team of experts, and join our success, hopefully so. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for your presentation, Chen.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I guess you're right. I don't think that much about wound care, but I'm sure it's really important. You know, with nearly every medical application, there are negative consequences. So what are the known negative consequences, if any, associated with putting this material topically over the wound?
Actually, there are none, because the materials we are using, no, it's true, because
it's a good
the materials,
answer.
well, you know, the materials we are using, although it's a solution that is completely trademarked by the company, it's built of materials that are known to the medical field. And they are using it, for example, in sutures, in other dressings. So the raw material are known, and the body completely accept it without any reactions to it. And of course, as a medical device, we have to go through a whole set of biocompatibility testing, you know. So we cannot lie about it. It's just fact.
Yeah.
And,
so given that it's been around, the material's been around, what do you think has been the impediment or has stopped people from applying it in this way in the past? What's the critical innovation here that enabled you to do this? You know, the spin care, I guess there's something about the way it's applied, but what specifically is it that makes it usable now and different than it was before?
So basically, electrospinning is a known methodology, but normally and used as big machines, highly complicated, computer controlled, highly enabling, by the way. This is why they're using it a lot in the academic world. But what we did is we actually miniaturized it into this portable device while keeping the advantages of the electrospan matrix and bringing it to the patient. So this is really a technological challenge that we had to face. And this is why I mentioned that this is the first device ever in the market that is doing so. And what we get is the structure of the electrospan nanofibers is biomimicking the structure of the human body. And that's why the body reacts to it so positively. Yeah. And we have a few other advantages that we gain just by doing it in situ, like you know, in real time. Yeah. Just like an excellent adherence.
I have many questions, but I'll yield my time to my colleagues.
May I know, Chan, please, the financial aspect of the company? How is going on? And are you going to raise capital? And what is the situation? What is the future, in your opinion?
Yeah, as you can understand, we have a very promising financial model, you know, with the revenues from the disposable. And we have now laid out a global rollout plan. We have a deep R&D program, and we need to raise a lot of money to make it happen. We have been okay until now. I mean, we are still okay, but we are looking into raising a big raise of about $20 to $30 million to allow us to execute on our global rollout and development.
From 20 to
30. So we can do it at $30 million, at $20 to $30 million, and we are going to do it either via an IPO. We have everything on the table. We are actually have an option to do that via an IPO, but we can consider other options as well. But at this stage, we need a significant amount of money because we are in a stage that we need to run and really execute on the plan, put it in the market, establish the system in the market, and continue with the R&D. Our R&D goes all the way through to cell therapy, which is the high end of the wound care today. And we can embed the cells into our solution and deliver it with the spinker. So we have really huge potential. And I mean, using some imagination, you can think about application in aesthetics, in cosmetics, you know, because we can put inside collagen, hyaluronic acid, silicone, you know, drugs, whatever you want. So it's really an endless opportunities, and we are focusing right now, despite this endless potential on the wound care market.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Chen, as Ray was asking about earlier, the actual nanofiber has been around for a while now, and it looks like your IP is really all related to the delivery of the nanofiber. So it's really all of your IPs on the delivery side. How defensible is that IP over time, and where are you in terms of your patent portfolio today?
So we have a decent portfolio with actually priority, very good priority compared to all the other groups, like academic groups that are trying to do the same as we did. So we feel very secure around the device. Of course, you know, someone may try to copy it, but we still have. It's not very simple to do so because it's not enough to copy the device. The actual formulation of the solution in the ampoule is really a one-to-one, very accurate, very specific relationship with the device. So it's a dual you know, connection here. You cannot just use any other ampoule, put something inside, and come to the device and expect it to create this nanofibrous matrix. So then there will be a need of a very deep know-how of the electrospinning space in order to copy it. And we definitely have a very big lead in the market because we are there, we are introducing it, we have already started sales in Europe. So it's not completely defendable, but I think it's not easy to duplicate it.
Yeah, so just to make sure I heard you correctly, are you saying then that the nanofiber solution is made up of two different components that you're mixing together in the delivery system?
No, I'm saying there is the delivery system and there is the ampoule that contains the solution. The solution itself is a formulation that we have developed. So in order to formulate the solution in a way that it will work with the device, you have to have a very deep knowledge of the electrospinning space. It's not very easy. So for us as well.
So even the solution itself is proprietary.
It's absolutely proprietary. It's a trademark. It's not protected by a patent, but it's a complete trademark, and we do not publish it, not even on this box. So.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for the judges' questions.
For me, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chen.
Thank you.
Well, while the judges score, if we can have the presenter from BrainQ take the stage and get settled.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. And we'll give it a minute to the judge.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, Vic, please.
Yeah. Yes.
We managed to have vivers, so in the big scale, the images of the presentation, in the small scale, the person. So because sometimes it's difficult to.
Okay, so you want the presentation to be the bigger scale, that's how I'm seeing it on my stage. Or is that what you're saying, Eduardo?
Yes, if it's possible, please. Otherwise, no problem.
Oh, then I guess, Shil, if you want to untag Yotam. I'm sorry, unpin him. So so the speaker is not big. The slide deck is big.
Yes,
so,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. Does that look better, Eduardo?
No, it's always the same, but.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've removed the spotlight, so I'm
Fine.
not
It's
sure
fine.
why
It's fine.
still-
It's fine for me because I
Okay.
have 3 screens.
No, I think what you do, Eduardo, is upper right-hand side, say view.
Yeah.
You want to swap video and shared screen. Try that to see if it fixes it. Upper right-hand side, it says view.
Thank you. Done
Did it work? Okay, cool. Okay.
If it helps, I also don't see you on the other end as well. I only see my presentation. So I'll imagine you, you'll imagine me.
Well, okay, great. Well, you'll see him during Q&A. So
I guess.
yeah,
I guess.
good to
I guess I
start.
will.
Good to start.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yotam, and I'm a CEO and co-founder of BrainQ. Let me just make sure. Okay. Every one of us will know someone in his life that had a stroke, and for every single almost stroke patient, their life has changed from the minute of stroke and on. For me, it actually happened a month ago when my grandma, who used to be fully independent, a working person, had a stroke and became paralyzed on half of her body. This is the #1 cause of long-term disability. For decades, we had, For decades, we had the medical community focusing mainly on survival following stroke. And honestly, we have made it with two solutions, but they are applicable for about 5% of the patients, and only with a very narrow window of opportunity of about few hours only. BrainQ's aim is to completely change this picture, and our solution, and based on our results, aims for tenfold in percentage of patients and extending this window of opportunity from hours to weeks. We want to get these patients back on their feet, literally. The way we do so, and I'm going to talk about it, is that we are trying to target networks in the brain that have been impaired and facilitate their recovery. We do so by trying to track their code. How do we do this? Well, for decades, the brain has been looked mostly via biochemical approach by pharma companies have been spending billions of dollars. Many failed. At the very same time, if you look at what happened in the past decade, many different things fall into place. Our understanding how to look at the brain, in essence, as a computer via the brainwaves, and the usage of machine learning tools actually allows modeling these networks in a different way. And this is exactly what BrainQ does. We first model this healthy brain and the non-healthy brain. We have created the world's largest database out there. In essence, we ask ourselves, what happens in an healthy person brain when he's trying to grab a glass of water, like I just grabbed it now, versus when he's not? And then we ask a question of what happens in a stroke patient when he's trying to grab a glass of water or he can no longer do it. So we look for these two baselines, and then we use explanatory machine learning tools in order to extract the anomalies between the different states. We've actually been doing this with Google back in 2018. And with what we find, we translate it into a frequency-tuned, low-intensity electromagnetic field therapy that in essence come to fill these gaps and facilitate endogenous recovery mechanisms. But no matter what we do on the efficacy side, what we've realized from day one is that we will never be able to win in the market and really to transform patients' life if we will not bring a new kind of solution. Back in 2017, we actually came to IBM and told them we want to create a cloud-connected therapeutic medical device. There was no such a device back then. Honestly, there is no such a device as far as we know today that can really treat at scale. And we have been developing this from 2017, a cloud-connected system that allow treating the patients at their own home. Treat the patients wherever they are in a patient-centric way, because patients don't live in hospitals. They live in their communities, they live at home. This has actually been demonstrated as highly useful during the COVID, when these patients were not allowed to go back to hospitals, even get their treatment, and we were able to deliver them treatment at their homes. Our results recently published by International Stroke Conference actually demonstrated quite, I would say, striking recovery from stroke. So if you look at the MRS, which is the gold standard in the world of stroke, typically you're supposed to move by about 1 point. If you get the normal standard of care, BrainQ's treatment group improved by 2.5 points. In a randomized double-blind, which was highly overseen by a CRO, international CRO company, and we had no related adverse events. So for us, this has been a big opportunity. And based on these results, we actually received from the FDA a breakthrough designation and on our approach, which now allows us, hopefully for a Medicare coverage as early as day one, following FDA approval as a DME, durable medical equipment, with a further consumable attached to it. We have, as I said, we are now approaching a pivotal study with some of the top sites in the US, Harvard, Cornell, UCLA, Northwestern, and so forth, and really some of the top experts, where we test for the first time in the world a decentralized kind of care, one that starts in the acute hospital, moves to the rehab center, and ultimately continues at home. We've actually raised over $50 million. We have more than 40 in the pocket. In our last round, B round, just closed a few weeks ago, not yet disclosed. And this is just the beginning for us. There are 5 more indications in our pipeline, including AD, Alzheimer, Parkinson, MS, and so forth. And we do believe that the kind of methodology that we use allows for the scalability and to create a new standard of care for neuro patients. This could not have been happening without the state-of-the-art team. So my co-founders and I, Professor Orsi Shwami, one of the world leaders in neurotrauma, Dr. Yaron Segal is a geophysicist and looking for a cure for his own son, and some of the best people in Israel, I would say, both inside of data science, product, and so forth, all together set for the mission of changing patients' lives following stroke and other neuro disorders. And we are very privileged to work with some of the top experts also in the world in this field. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yotam.
Yeah, I'll do a stop share, so I'll see you back.
I have a question, Yotam, if it's possible. Ray, may go ahead?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Yotam, I've seen that you have analyzed that using your therapy, using your way to medical, the result is 2.5, better than other process.
Yes.
There is something that you're expecting that will either get higher performances. There are already space of advantage or some growing capabilities that you are already finding out in whatever you're doing now?
Yes. So let's, points are not patient's life. Let's talk about what have we changed in patient's life, because this will be a better demonstration. If you make it to a score of a 0 or 1 on the MRS scale, again, this is the gold standard in the world of stroke. That means you are with little to no disability to the extent that you can go back to the work cycle. BrainQ's treatment group, 77% made it to a 0 or 1. 92% improved by 2 or more points, which is twice as much as you would expect. 54% improved by 3 points, which in essence means they've made a recovery which cannot happen in any spontaneous way. It did not happen in the sham group. So the impact for this patient's life is tremendous. And we do believe that, in essence, it brings and restores these patients into a state of fully independent people. And this is what we're after. We're trying to move the needle.
Can you talk a little bit about the physics of what's going on?
Wow,
I'll do it. Just a little. You don't have to go deep, but I'd like to know a little bit about the physics or the physiology.
Perfect. So, I mean, first of all, it's worth kind of a separate full discussion. But over the course of the past decade, there is an emerging understanding that different networks, in essence, play by different wavelengths. So different frequencies. Think about the brain as kind of a sophisticated radio or communication hub. And it's not just that this frequency band is kind of a byproduct of their activity. It actually plays a tango with it. So it's an important ingredient in every single process of the network as a whole. Now, a dead cell is a dead cell. I cannot revive it. What I can do is I can communicate to the network and kind of cheat it as if it had worked normally. I'm creating I would say, the normal microenvironment for the network to feel as if everything is okay, and then the network would find its own way to reorganize itself. And the brain is priming for this kind of a reorganization, regardless of me. This is what happened in physical therapy. I'm the amplifier. And finding the right codes allows me to do so. Does it help?
Yeah, it helps. And one question, if you think of kind of like a Fourier transform of the brain frequencies and you lay them out on a graph, do you find that there's a consistent, obviously you're using machine learning to identify this, so it must vary by patient,
yes,
right?
So first of all,
so the frequency layout varies by patient and the amplitude and frequency?
Spot on. So, I mean, the first thing to realize is the brain is the most complex mechanism out there. There is no easy solution of, here is 40 Hz, it's just going to fix it all. It's not going to work. But there is actually a yin and yang. There are universality in patterns, and there is also personality in patterns. Our challenge is to find this delicate balance. And there is much more we can go in the future. Imagine that, at one point in life, we're going to have every single healthy person measured for in every single year of his life before he gets a stroke. To get a baseline. I don't have it now.
Yeah.
So right now I get my baselines from healthy general population by different buckets. And then I compare the non-healthy to these buckets. So again, we have a lot of data, and we can talk about explanatory machine learning because this is taking supervised learning and adding one more layer up. We've been working on this with Peter Norwick from Google. We can talk about it. But definitely there is a lot of nuances, and every single day we understand how much we don't know. So, I mean, to be very honest, this is just the very beginning of a long journey.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Hi, Otam. So 2 quick questions following up on Ray's questions here. We're really talking about neuroplasticity here, right? Because you're creating new neural pathways. What potential risks are there that you're going to have to address as you go through the regulatory process, number one? And number 2, what risks are there associated with the fact that you're using an electromagnetic field? I know it's low intensity, but what risks are there that you're going to have to address as well?
Fair point. So first of all, electromagnetic field is a big bucket for many different things. To give you kind of an intuition, BrainQ is using an electromagnetic field which is less than 1 Gauss. If you compare it to an MRI, that's probably 40,000 times lower. If you compare it to something like a TMS, it's about 10,000 times lower. 1 Gauss is something you can go on a public exposure. It's really a butterfly effect. When it comes to, these are patients in need. They have no other solution. Every single IRB would always ask itself, what's the potential benefit? What's the potential cost? We had no related adverse events in any of our clinical studies worldwide so far. And we did have some benefits, as I've shown you just in a glimpse. So you always have to weigh them in. And again, the reason why we've picked this kind of electromagnetic field, aside from the mechanistic nature, is because it allows for the scalability. It allows me to treat patients at home. It takes me about 30 minutes to make you an operator of this treatment. I don't need a skilled personnel. And then it will take you less than a minute to dress it on a patient. It's a wearable. So think about the scaling. If we're talking about target addressable market of 300,000 patients in the US alone, now for us as a company, I need a massive scale. I cannot have them go back to hospitals. Nobody going to pay for it, and it's just not going to work. I need to train the caregivers to be an active part. I need to create an holistic system that will allow to address it. This is the kind of electromagnetic field that actually allows for it. Did I address your question?
Yes, you did. The second part of the question. The first part is creating new neural pathways.
Oh, yes.
As you're going through the FDA, based on what I've read, there really is no risk or minimal risk there. But what do you have to prove in terms of safety with, say, the FDA or CE?
Right. So first of all, we are privileged. I mean, being now on the breakthrough side, we actually have this kind of sprint discussions, and we are in close discussions with the FDA, and I think we see eye to eye kind of our path forward. What the FDA would care about eventually is, again, safety and efficacy. It's very difficult to talk, and the FDA is kind of, from my understanding, has exempted any need to kind of talk about the exact mechanism of action when it comes to brain technologies, because nobody can really prove it all the way. But safety-wise, when we have demonstrated, again, both in human and in preclinical, that this is on the safe side, this is the best way you can go. I do want to make one more point. I haven't talked about it in the presentation. We don't just facilitate plasticity processes. We actually also reduced hostile factors. So you have to kind of reduce the hostile factors which are following stroke and enhance the ones that has to do with plasticity. Both happens on a network level, and both can be facilitated with this kind of electromagnetic field. And not just that, most electromagnetic fields are actually targeting a specific area or region in the brain. We're not targeting an area or region in the brain. The field is homogeneous. What we target is the network by the oscillation. So again, it's part of the scalability, and it's also about, we don't know where the recovery is going to come from. We allow the network to do its own process. So again, a very different, I would say, mechanistic approach, and one that depends on data science and not just science.
Great, it's very interesting. I'll just make one comment that the measurement, the 1 Gauss comment, I'm sure from I believe that from a biological point of view, it's safe, but the degree with which the electromagnetic field interacts with the device is related to the resonance. So even 1 Gauss at a high resonance can have pretty big impact, like the Q of the circuit, if you think of that, if you know that
You're
term.
right.
Yeah.
We are less, okay, so I haven't mentioned it, but we are using very low frequency as well. So basically below 50 hertz. These are the natural frequencies. They're not considered they're not considered a problem. If you would look at the public exposure guidelines for this kind of low intensity, low frequency, again, these are below regular public exposure. Your cell phone next to you creates much more than that.
Super, thank you. Thanks so much.
Yep. Great, Yotam. Let's give it the judges a minute, and why don't we get Fagomed up on stage to set up.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Can you hear and see everything?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, ready to go, Fagomed. It has developed breakthrough therapies for chronic infections. Go ahead, Alexander.
We're just getting to terms with the current pandemic, and yet we already know what the next health crisis is going to be. We've all read that antibiotics are losing their edge and that bacteria are becoming resistant, and we urgently need new drugs. I'm Alexander Belcredi. I'm co-founder and CEO of Fagomed, where we use synthetic biology to kill bacteria with precision, for example, in women's health. What you see here is the microscopic image of a vaginal sample from a patient who we call Lisa. The yellow are the bad bacteria that have formed the thick biofilm on top of Lisa's vaginal epithelial cell and caused the disease that's called bacterial vaginosis. The problem for Lisa is she can't shake the disease. Why? Because every time she takes an antibiotic, the result is this. The bacteria that cause the disease have become resistant to the antibiotics that we have to treat them. Bacterial vaginosis is highly unpleasant, and it exposes women to high risks, for example, preterm birth. So we urge precision antibacterials that are called lysins. Lysins work a bit like explosives. They're a class of proteins that had recognized the chemical cell wall of bacteria and punch a hole into that, which kills the bacteria. Lysins are also beautifully precise. Every type of bacteria, every species of bacteria has a slightly different cell wall chemistry. And so a lysin that works on one type of bacteria cannot work on another. Finally, the cell wall structure of bacteria is very different from all type of other cells, including human cells. So lysins are very safe. At Fagomed, we've developed a synthetic biology workflow to design these proteins at unprecedented speed. We have a genomic database with thousands of building blocks that allows us to pick different ones that are best suited for a certain pathogen. We then test hundreds and thousands of variations in a robotics-enabled screening process to get to candidates that we think are viable drugs. We then patent those and move them through the development cycle. For example, in women's health. To help patients such as Lisa, we've designed a highly potent precision antibacterial, a drug that kills the yellow, the bad bacteria, but that leaves the red intact. Those are the good bacteria that every female vagina depends on. Bacterial vaginosis affects millions of women, and it's also a global problem. Prevalence is much higher in the developing world than the developed world, and it remains, for example, a key reason for preterm birth in sub-Saharan Africa. This is a disease with a big medical need. For us as a company, it's also just our starting point. Using our Lysin Builder platform, we can develop similar precision interventions for many diseases out there. We can prevent bacterial pandemics, and we can design microbiome interventions that open up whole new medical frontiers. So where are we as a company? We're about to close our Series A. We're ready to scale up, and we will bring our bacterial vaginosis drug into the clinic next year. To do all that, we've assembled a fantastic team. Our management team includes biotech veterans and business experts. Our board of directors is chaired by Len Moore, who used to lead the antibiotics division at AstraZeneca. And on bacterial vaginosis, the key clinicians throughout the globe support our program and our vision to help patients such as Lisa. So that's us in a nutshell. We use synthetic biology to kill bacteria with precision and solve the antibiotic resistance crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander.
I can kick it off with the first question. Alexander, nice to meet you. So it sounds like your secret sauce is that you're able to produce these licenses at scale very quickly. So is your proprietary technology really revolving around the mass production of license, or is it that you've been able to synthetically create the license to target the bacteria as well? I mean, to what extent is it just one, or to what extent is it both?
It's more the latter. So license exists in nature, for example, in bacteriophages. The challenge is we only know phages for about maybe 10 to 15 important pathogens, but there are about 50 to 70 of them out there. And so for bacterial vaginosis, nobody had ever found a phage, and by consequence, nobody had ever found a lysine. But using genomic analysis and essentially pattern recognition, we were able to predict how that lysine could look like. We went through a number of different iterations. We found the number that worked, we improved them, we patented them, and then showed that they actually work on human patient samples. So it really is the latter. Synthetic lysins are a game changer for precision antibacterials because they're possible essentially for every pathogen, which natural lysins are not.
You mentioned that they're very safe and that they're very targeted. Any other comments on the safety approval process, or has it been completed? Where are you in that process?
So we've completed the in vitro safety testing with no concerning signal whatsoever. We're currently running in vivo studies on that. Lysins have been shown in multiple settings to be extremely safe because they target sugar chains in the peptidoglycan in the bacterial cell wall, and eukaryotic cells simply don't have peptidoglycan. And so any off-target effects would be highly surprising. Having said that, it's a biologic, so it needs to go through the full pharmaceutical development process.
And so affecting other good bacteria isn't a real concern at this point.
They're incredibly precise. So in the vagina, for example, the lactobacilli are the type of bacteria that you want to preserve. Our lysine has no impact whatsoever on the beneficial lactobacilli. It can't recognize the cell wall and it can't cut it open because the peptidoglycan structure is somewhat different. Not day and night, but it's different enough to make our lysine active.
Yeah, I guess it would be interesting. I take your word for it again, but it would be interesting to kind of lay out a set of bacteria and see what the overlap was and see whether the selectivity was enough to separate from the good bacteria, but that'll
We
happen
published
during the
that.
trials. Yeah,
We
thank you.
published that in January.
Thank you.
Alex, which is the competition situation about this? I'm not so deep in this particular kind of things, but I like to understand how is the competition in this kind of niche of the healthcare industry.
So obviously there's a number of different approaches for developing new antibiotics. There's very few that can deliver both potency and precision. License is one of them. If I look narrowly at our field, then there's about 5 companies worldwide who are also developing license, but they all work with natural license, which means by definition, their lead programs are all Staph aureus. And that already shows you the challenge. There are very few bacteria where we can find a potent enough, selective enough, drug grade enough lysine in nature. But for many, such as Gardnerella, that just wasn't possible until now. You need a synthetic element to it to actually learn from all of the types of lysins out there and then build and design the right drugs.
Are there any other use cases that you're working on right now? Any other bacteria that are looking to target right now? The one that comes to mind for me is, I think, MRSA, which is a major issue right now in US hospitals. So yeah, I was curious as to what's next.
We have a pipeline of antibiotic-resistant pathogens where that one might fit into, but we also have a pipeline of microbiome interventions. So if we think about medical frontiers, then we're starting to understand how individual bacteria play a role in diseases that we wouldn't even classify as infectious diseases. There are links between bacteria and rheumatoid arthritis. There are links between bacteria and Alzheimer's. This is all sort of frontier stuff. And we think there's a number of pathogens that are worth the bet in a balanced portfolio with antibiotic-resistant pathogens. So our pipeline currently is 6 bacteria. The only one I can disclose is the Gardnerella program.
I can ask a few more questions if no one else wants to jump in. What is the addressable market size for the current use case? And what is your commercialization strategy?
Yeah. So as a biotech company, we will obviously look for a pharma partner to take the drug all the way into market, especially for bacterial vaginosis. There are a number of women's health-centered pharma companies who are preferred partners for that because you do need to go to the gynecologists and convince them to use the drug. In terms of commercialization pathway, we focus where the biggest medical need is today, which is in women who are failing the antibiotic therapy, such as the patient sample that I showed you before from a patient we call Lisa. She's obviously not called Lisa, I don't even know what she's called, but these are women who have gone through multiple cycles of antibiotics and where there simply is an antibiotic-resistant biofilm in the vaginal canal. And so these are patients which do trigger high costs, but also are at a much higher risk of, for example, bad pregnancy outcomes, but also mental health issues related to that chronic disease.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, starting the second half, Curries, which is a solution that connect the right patients to the right clinical trials. Kevin, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Victoria. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Wang, and I'm the founder of Curies. Curies is motivated by one thing, which is currently there are so many diseases that are death sentences if you get them. Say pancreatic cancer, where the survival rate for 5 years is only 10 to 20%. What we believe is that in some point in the future, there's going to be treatments that can cure or significantly treat those diseases that right now are fatal or mortal. What we want to do is to bring those treatments that are out there 50 years from now. How do we get them in 5 years? How do we get them in 3 years? How do we get them to today? And a lot of that comes from clinical trials. Those are where the experimental treatments currently are. So how do we make the system more robust and more quickly so that it could be as efficient as what we've seen with these COVID vaccinations, where they're just coming out within a single year? A lot of this has to do with this problem right here, which is enrollment issues. So oftentimes clinical trials fail before they can even begin because they can't find the patients that are willing to go into this clinical trial, which is really interesting because 50% of patients say they wish to participate in a clinical trial if it's offered by physicians. So what's the holdup? What's the bottleneck here? It's this middle figure where only 0.2% of physicians refer patients to clinical trials. So when you can think about why are clinical trials failing, why are they not finding enough patients, it's really this lack of referral from physicians. So what can we do to get physicians to recommend clinical trials to patients who are well suited? The problem is that while only 0.2% of physicians refer patients to clinical trials, 90% say they wish to discuss clinical trial options with their patients. So that's really, really strange, right? Why do 90% of doctors say that they see this as a valuable option, but only 0.2% actually do this and refer patients to trials? And it's really because of tremendous information inefficiencies. 54% of doctors simply lack access to trial information. They don't know what are the trials that are out there and what are the ones that are very valuable. 48% don't know where to refer to patients. So which hospitals are running these trials? You know, your local physician may not understand which centers different trials are being held at. And the most important part is that 33% express that they don't have enough time to research these trials. So if you're a physician, you're treating dozens, if not hundreds of patients, you don't have the time to look at each patient and understand which trials may be suited for them. So this is the slide that makes people yawn, because this is what reality is for a lot of these physicians, which is this huge wall of text about what makes a patient eligible for this trial versus not. And so if you're a physician and you're thinking about what trials your patient could be eligible for, you have to read this clinical trial and you have to match this clinical trial to each of your patients. And you have to repeat this process for dozens, if not hundreds of trials, depending on the condition. So this is something that most physicians are definitely not going to spend the time to do. And instead, they simply go based on what trials they are immediately aware of in their immediate network. Currently, the options to resolve this problem aren't that many. There's physician referral, but we've mentioned why this is an issue, why physicians don't have the time to do so. There's direct-to-patient marketing, you know, those ads you might see on Facebook, which is if you're a 20 to 40-year-old Asian male, this trial may be for you. But of course, those response rates are extremely low. Nobody really trusts that if they're not hearing it from physicians. And finally, have different online trial finders. But this don't take into consideration the specific clinical profile for each patient. So there's a lack of specificity. Even so, even though this market is extremely inefficient, it's still very valuable and it's ripe for disruption, with an estimated $5.3 billion in this space by 2030 in order to recruit patients to clinical trials. And here's where we get to our solution, which is Curies. Curies is a machine learning based process which receives patient information from their electronic health records. So all the information about a patient, whether what stage of disease they have, what biomarkers of that disease they have, their medical history or previous treatment, that's all based in their electronic health records. It's ready and willing to be matched into clinical trials. So that's where Curies' proprietary technology comes into play, which is our natural language processing engine. Our artificial intelligence platform allows our doctors to match patients automatically to all trials across the nation and presents a simple analysis of both the benefits and the risks. So for instance, for a lung cancer disease where EGFR is a common mutation, Curies will look into the patient's electronic health records and determine if they have that specific mutation, if they meet the stage requirements for that trial, and then explain which of the screening trial criteria are met and which criteria are remaining. We also have an indicator for physicians to quickly understand if this is an exciting treatment or not based on the scientific community's perspectives. So looking at different impact factors of this treatment that's being tested, we can understand whether this is something that the physician may be interested in recommending for their patients. So our business model is always going to be free for providers and patients. So despite the fact that providers are primarily the end users of the trial, they're not going to pay a single cent. Where this budget is going to be coming from is from the clinical trial administrators who have specific budgets. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund clinical trials and to recruit patients. And currently, through those inefficient methods we've mentioned earlier, it costs them roughly $300 to $1,000 per patient. So we charge them a simple fee of $200 per referral. And so that is our business model. And what we've heard so far by contacting these clinical trial administrators is that they're very open to this idea because it's much cheaper and much more efficient than what they're currently using. So in terms of our milestones, we hatched this idea back in September, so we're a relatively young and new company. We were incubated in October of last year, and then in January of this year, we pivoted to our direct-to-physician strategy after engaging in market research and understanding really what are the needs and who are the most valuable customer segments. We developed our MVP focusing solely on pancreatic cancer because this is an area where patients are really looking for clinical trials, and physicians tell us that there's not very great options. And then currently we're testing this MVP and reaching out to our partners who are experts in pancreatic cancer across the nation, as well as those who run pancreatic cancer clinical trials. So where we are currently is that we're looking for seed funding in order to continue developing this MVP and then in order to continue developing our strategy. So to close off the presentation, my name is Kevin Wing. Formerly, I'm a healthcare consultant and an AI and biotechnology researcher. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, please feel free to email us at curieshealth@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thanks for the presentation, Kevin. This is an interesting area. It seems to me, though, that what's kept the people who really benefit from clinical trials from coming up with an improved model? I mean, it seems to me that drug companies and others who are running clinical trials, their lifeblood is around successful clinical trials. And I haven't, this is honestly the first time I've heard that I know we have a shortage of chips because we can't build cars, but I didn't know we had a shortage of clinical trial participants. So that's news to me. So what's caused the drug companies to be inefficient in this process, if in fact they are?
That's a good question. So the inefficiency really comes from identifying patients. So currently the way that patients are identified is that a physician needs to already be aware of this trial. Or
don't the drug companies though partner with physicians aren't there certain physicians that they're go-to physicians who are really better at this than others? It's not a uniform distribution of physicians capable of doing this. Some physicians do it well and some don't. So they have their go-to physicians for certain trials, right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, where a lot of these academic physicians who are at cancer centers of excellence,
right?
That's where pharmaceuticals. That's where pharmaceutical companies are definitely going to go towards. But oftentimes they still can't fill the sample simply because of the lack of patients that are willing to invest and spend time within the trials. The vast majority of cancer patients, for instance, aren't treated at these comprehensive cancer care centers or academic centers of excellence. Community oncology clinics play a big role in this, where there's community oncology clinics where patients are being treated, but the physicians aren't, they're not academics. They aren't aware of all the different trial options.
What are the early indications of traction? Have you talked with folks who say, wow, this is breakthrough and we got to have this?
Yeah, so primarily we've been speaking to physicians, and among the regional local level physicians that we've talked to, they think this is completely transformational because before, clinical trials aren't really an option that they were really considering for many of their patients. They don't have the time to do so. So they essentially find the best therapy that they have available, but it may not be the best shot for patients.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey.
A few questions here. I've dug in this space a little bit, and you're absolutely right. This is actually it's borderline shocking how inefficient clinical trial enrollment can be. And pharma companies have no idea how to find these patients. They struggle, and it's almost by luck that sometimes they get patients enrolled into a trial. About the data sets that you ingest on the front end, can you tell me a little bit about the EHR data? Where are you getting it from? Are you getting it directly from the health systems? Are you getting it from an intermediary? How up to date is that EHR data? Because that plays a big role in identifying patients.
So right now we're integrating with the Epic App Orchard to directly get the data directly from Epic systems. So as long as healthcare providers grant us access to that, it's as up to date as they maintain the records for their patients.
Okay. Are you also ingesting lab data, ancillary lab data, genomic data? Are you ingesting data from other sources beyond what's beyond the EMR?
So currently we're not, although so for the MVP, that's not something that we're considering, as it's not the most salient and important part of this and what for the trial matching process. But in the future, that's definitely part of it if we can expand to that it would definitely improve the matching algorithm.
Okay. And then I heard you use the word pre-screening, which is obviously very critical. So you do match the pre-screening criteria with the patient to make sure that they're eligible for the trial, right?
Yeah, that's the entire point of the natural language processing engine, is to look at, this checklist of different criteria and ensure that the patient matches into that criteria.
Okay, and then my final question, I'll pass it over to Eduardo. One of the biggest reasons that patients still end up falling through the cracks or not getting enrolled into trials is the logistics part on the back end. So sometimes you see a patient that is matched with a trial, but then it turns out that the patient doesn't live closely enough to the trial site, right? So they don't have transportation. In some cases, they don't have insurance, and if they don't have insurance, they're not going to be covered, for the trial. And so, have you addressed the last mile element? Because that to me is actually one of the biggest reasons why enrollments don't happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So as part of the matching process, healthcare professionals can choose for a specific patient how willing they are to travel. And so we have the locations of all where each of these trials are being held. So we can include that as one of the matching quote unquote criteria. So, if I'm an elderly patient, I don't want to travel too far outside my current home of Los Angeles, I can look for trials that are only within Los Angeles.
Yes, this was exactly because I've invested in something similar some years ago, and I understand that exactly the last mile is the critical one. Also, I made it so smart to understand the questions before I did it. And in how many countries are you now? And what is the next steps in terms of next market that you are going to address?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, all of our clinical trials are based in the US because we pull from the clinical trials government website as the API. So although we can still include other clinical trials, such as from China is a big one where they also maintain suitable records. Currently, we're starting out, right? So we're maintaining focus in the US.
Kevin, are you from China?
Originally, I'm from China. Yeah.
Which part of China?
Shanghai.
Shanghai. Okay, I live there. So the next step is going to you don't go in Indian, okay. And so the next step is over there.
Yeah. Maybe we can meet up in Shanghai.
For sure. Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Kevin from Curies.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Now I'm going to invite Patrick from Syrexa onto the stage, which they make novel antibiotics that can cure.
After 1 minute, right?
Oh yes. He's going to get set up.
Yeah, all set. Thank you.
Yep, ready to go.
All right, let's welcome Patrick from Syrexa, which makes novel antibiotics that can cure untreatable infectious diseases. Patrick, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm Patrick Dietzen, co-founder of Syrexa, and we're building the future of antibiotics. As many of you know, bacteria are getting more and more resistant to all the world's antibiotics, so much so that we're at risk of losing antibiotics entirely. And if we do, modern medicine will break down. We won't be able to do invasive procedures, and many diseases we can treat easily today will become deadly. Despite this threat, new antibiotic approvals have been going down over the years, so now there's just not enough in the pipeline to keep up with the resistance. Already in the US alone, every 15 minutes a person dies from resistant bacteria. This has become such a big problem, it is now considered one of the top global threats, right up there with climate change. Fortunately, we have an amazing innovation to combat this threat. We've developed a new class of chemicals called ACEs. ACEs are the first new class of broad-spectrum antibiotics to be discovered in over 50 years. Because of their novel mechanism of action, bacteria aren't resistant to them. ACEs were discovered much like penicillin was, serendipitously in Professor Bazan's lab at UCSB while researching energy production from bacteria. ACEs are paradigm changing. They're easy to produce and modular like Legos, which allows us to tune the structure to optimize for efficacy and safety. We modified our initial compounds to get the characteristics that are necessary for successful antibiotics, which led to 3 patents covering a wide range of potential disease applications. This IP is now held by Zaretza. We did studies on mice infected with superbug diseases that were deadly to hospital patients, and we've had a 100% survival rate. We can combat many infections, but we recognize that finding a viable market for a new antibiotic is difficult. This is because the overall market for antibiotics is considered broken due to challenging economics, but the landscape is now changing as governments around the world are creating programs to incentivize antibiotic development. This includes the GAIN Act that provides extended patent life and the Pasteur Act that will provide $1 to $3 billion in market entry awards per drug. ACEs can combat many diseases and will benefit significantly from these policy changes, but we've identified a beachhead market that has such a large unmet need today, it does not depend on any of these government incentives. This market is NTM lung disease. So put aside any biases against the antibiotic space because our target market is an extremely viable and profitable opportunity. NTM is a debilitating and chronic lung disease. Coughing can be so bad it can break a rib. It's a $2.5 billion market growing at 5% per year, and the current drug available to treat this is only 29% effective with horrible side effects such as deafness. But ACEs can potentially cure 100% of these patients while reducing side effects and treatment time. We project over $1 billion in annual sales by our 5th year on the market. I should point out that the current drug that's only 29% effective has already had sales of over $270 million in just its first couple years on the market with strong projected growth. We have an incredible team to tackle this problem. We have Guy Bazan, who's one of the world's top material scientists, as well as 4 PhDs with backgrounds in microbiology and chemistry, as well as entrepreneurs with a proven track record. I had the privilege of previously co-founding UCSB spin-out company Serogen with Professor Bazan, which had a successful $70 million exit to Becton Dickinson. Zaretza has $2 million in non-dilutive funding and is seeking a $3 million seed to develop a candidate we can take through IND-enabling studies. So here's the thing. Zaretza is not only a fantastic investment, but it could save millions of lives, and who knows, it might even save your life as well. Thanks so much for listening.
Hi, Patrick. Nice presentation, very interesting material, and congratulations on your previous exit. That makes you feel good, I'm sure. I guess the simple question is, how do you eliminate the word potentially? What's the process by which you're going to go through? You on the one slide, you said that it had an effectiveness of 29% or whatever it was, and we have potentially an effective rate of 100%. So how do we go through, what are the processes that the next steps you're going to go through to figure out the efficacy?
Sure, yeah. Well, as I said, we've already done some initial studies in mice to show the effectiveness. And so now we need to work on further optimizing the compounds for safety and efficacy and continue to do validation studies.
So are you ready for safety and efficacy, in particular safety studies? Are you ready for safety studies in the clinical trials yet? Or do you have more work to do in the development?
The next step for us is to identify, get to a lead candidate that we can demonstrate on NTM specifically in mice, and then get to a lead candidate that we can take through IND.
So in reality, we're quite a ways from potentially. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's fairly early stage.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick, could you talk a little bit about the mechanism of how the product works?
Sure, yeah, it's a novel mechanism of action. It is a membrane action, and it's not like surfactants or detergents, and it's so it's a novel and it's unlike any other kind of membrane active antibiotics on the market today. We're in the process of further researching the mechanism.
So what do you mean by the last sentence? You're further researching the mechanism. Does that mean you're still trying to tinker with the mechanism in order to maximize efficacy?
So we're trying to understand the mechanism better. I mean, we have some theories about it, but we're in the process of investigating that and looking to, publish some papers on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have demonstrated that we can tune the compounds to make them more selective for bacteria.
Okay, thanks.
I think, Patrick, you had a very good and clear speech. Here I can read some financial issues. That is also a point, and a very important point for me. But honestly, I understand everything, and everything was clear.
Great. No more questions from judges?
All said here. Thank you.
All right, good to go. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks all.
Great. Well, let's give the judges a minute to finish scoring, and let's bring up our presenter from Astra Algorithmos to get settled.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to be here. Hello to all the judges. Well, I'm Carlo Valentin Rodriguez. I'm CTO and co-founder of Astra Algorithms. What we are a medical imaging AI-powered tools company. So let's talk about a very big issue. In Latin America, the healthcare is an issue, but there's many levels of this issue, and the COVID exposed many systematic problems of this issue. Medical imaging is the go-to tool in order to get a proper diagnosis that detects a lot of diseases. But for that, you need radiologists. But we have the issue that in Latin America, we don't have enough radiologists. So it creates a lot of problems. The usual good rate to have a radiologist in the population is 10 radiologists per 100,000 people. Well, in Latin America, we just have 3. They're in Mexico also, and this creates a lot of other problems and issues, which is literally that the available radiologists that we have, they're overworked. They don't have enough time to check properly the medical imaging. This creates a lot of issues also in the patient side, because the patients are waiting a lot of time to receive the interpretation of their images, increase the risk. And in many cases during the pandemic, we saw those that people already died when they received the interpretation of the CX-ray. And this creates also a lot of other problems that need to be solved, and no one was working on that until we find out about it. That's when we came in, because we saw that in the pandemic, we could provide some help based on the experience of the founders of the things we worked before, because of this need that we detected. And also we wanted to do something in order to help our communities. We fall into the Sustainable Development Goals of good health and well-being, because respiratory diseases is one of the main causes of death in the worldwide lately in the last years, and also reducing inequalities. Half of the deaths caused by pulmonary diseases were caused in developing countries. So what we did, we created a telemedicine platform that is connected to the CRX machines in the hospitals. Why CRX machines? Because again, the public healthcare system, in many locations, they don't have access to a CT scan, but X-ray machines is widely available. So that's why we focus on X-ray machines. We connect those machines to our telemedicine platform, and in less than 90 minutes, the doctors on the clinics, on the hospitals, they receive interpretations done by certified radiologists. But these certified radiologists, their workload are being optimized and supercharged by AI tools that we created to help our radiologists, and at some point we want to expose to the world also to do these interpretations. The doctors receive the interpretations, otherwise they will be expecting in 3 to 5 days to get it. We get it in less than 90 minutes, and they can make treatment decisions to their patients. Our telemedicine platform is quite friendly, because, and also the friction to start working with the hospital is none. We just configure and connect the machines. We start receiving the CRX almost immediately. And once this is interpreted, the doctors on the field, they receive a notification on their phones, they get in online, and they check the interpretation, and also severity and many other markers. The opportunity is huge because the problem is huge. The telemedicine global market is growing exponentially because it's the new phase of medicine. The pandemic is something good. We get a pandemic that the telemedicine can also be widely available, and it's good, and it's the same quality as presential medicine. And we're aiming to serve a population of 677 million people within the last 5 years. Our first step is going to be the most populous countries in Latin America, and we will be serving 300 million population in this same amount of time. What is our revenue sources? Well, we have many revenue sources, many revenue streams. One of these is like the medical imaging, just storage, because by law and regulation, once you have in the cloud in medical imaging, you have to keep it for 5 years. And this is really cheap, and we can provide also to the hospitals. If they want the interpretation, we can charge per image and modality. It could get up to $10 depending on the volume of images and the modality. Licensing our AI models to another tools, another medical manufacturers. And something that we found out when we were working with radiologists is that many times when they are studying the specialization, they don't have access to properly labeled, properly interpreted data sets of many pathologies. We can also help in that part. We're a really good team. Memo, Pilar, and me, with the founders of the company, we've been friends since 10 years ago, partners from seven years ago in other AI companies that are really successful, and now they work on their own. We scout for the top talent in Mexico regarding artificial intelligence, medical imaging, and data science. We have an amazing medical council. The doctors are the ones that they say what we should do in our company. We take a lot of care in how we design our medical protocols and the way of work. And our milestones at the moment, we have partnership with the top universities in Mexico and also universities in India and the US. We're in the way of publish 2 papers regarding medical findings that we got, and also AI. 50 doctors who use our platform. We're working in 50 hospitals. In the last months, we treated more than 70,000 patients, analyzing 10,000 images. The accuracy of our models for COVID, for example, is 95%. The human doctors, the accuracy is 94%. And as we found, we can expand, we are expanding now to other pathologies, and our accuracy is 84%. It's a work in progress and improving, and we raised a pre-seed of 100K. What's next? We are looking to expand in our hospitals in the private sector, increase the pathologies, because the doctors are requesting that we help them to detect more diseases, add the CT scan modality for the private sector, look for a seed round, and start a certification process with the FDA. We found that doing good is a really good business. So that's why we're looking for visionary investors who believe that the medical AI will make them more better, because we found it, we saw it, and we totally believe in that. And that's why we're here. That's what we're doing. If you're interested, let me know, and let's solve your questions.
Start with one question. First of all, congratulations on the great progress in the hospitals, and the presentation was really good. This seems like a pretty crowded space. I've seen a lot of similar companies who are using AI and machine learning for medical imaging. What makes your approach or your company different?
First of all, is the focus that we have in the market that we have. In the doctors and the healthcare systems that we've been working with, when we approach to them, they say, yes, I know something similar, but when they come to us to start working with them, one thing that is prohibiting for them is the pricing. Another thing is the friction these solutions need to start working with them. And when we started this company, because of the contact we have, I literally wore a hazmat suit. I went to the COVID floor in a hospital. I talked directly with the doctors. And if a solution you try to implement in this region, it modifies a little bit the way of work of the doctors, they're going to reject it because they're totally overworked. It needs to be something natural, something frictionless. That's why we are totally different from those solutions. We understand why they need in the moment they need it, and we provide it in the way they need it. One example of this differentiator is in the way we get back the interpretation back in the language, because we learned that if you give to them some kind of machine interpretation, variable check marks, the doctors are not going to use it. They don't have the bandwidth to understand it. We modify that so they can literally get in natural language the interpretation, and they love it. They use it.
Okay, and so because of the personal interaction that you have with the doctors, do you think scaling will be a problem?
Yes, because scaling it will be a problem. No. We have that initial interaction to design the product, and now that we are well, you can continue improving totally, and we should continue listening to the doctors. The doctors are the kings in this company, as I say.
Right.
But as right now, the scaling is not a problem because the friction is totally seamless. Like for example, if a hospital sign up tomorrow, I just send literally some instructions how to configure the machines. They create the access, and that's it. That's it. And when we get the feedback from the doctors, we implement it literally transparent to them and continue scaling. Scaling is not an issue. Also, to keep us always in track of the needs of the doctors, our medical council is really strong. We have the top doctors, top radiologists of the country, and literally everything they said it will be for the doctors, we try to implement.
Okay, final question. Given that you're tailoring the words to meet the doctor's needs, so it's easy for the doctor, is that a manually intensive process? And if so, so that's all automated?
Yeah, it's all, the way is that we get the imaging, it passes through the models do some kind of pre-interpretation, which is validated by another doctor, because we need literally, because of safetyness and regulation, et cetera. And they say, yeah, everything is fine. Sometimes they just, some adjustments, sometimes they just literally say, okay, everything's fine, and go for that. That's why we optimize the workloads.
Okay, thank you.
Is one of the big challenges that you're solving here that there aren't enough physicians to interpret the scans, in which case you're basically in certain regions where there may be a shortage of physicians to interpret the scans, you can then bring on the doctors virtually to do so? Is that a big challenge right now? Or is the bigger problem that you're solving just the speed at processing through the scans and then giving a recommendation to the physician?
It's like a combination. Like, for example, there's radiologists, but they're concentrated in the cities. Rural towns and small cities, they're just one, and this doctor is totally overworked. That's why, even though, like, for example, one hospital produces 100 images per day, they want to interpret those, but it's going to take a lot of time. With our tool, in the case of radiologists, when we get 100 images, they take literally 10% of what would have taken to normally, because of these tools. So we put the radiologists on steroids. We optimize the workloads. We help them to produce more.
Okay, and in terms of the actual interpretation or of the scanning, which it sounds like it speeds up the physician's work. Let's use COVID as a use case. Does your AI basically say, hey, look, I've scanned this image, this X-ray, and this looks like COVID? I mean, what language is a doctor actually seeing before they sign off on it?
For example, in the case of COVID, it's like, okay, is COVID or not COVID? Because what we try to detect with AI is something called radiological findings. The radiological findings is literally like the lesions, pathologies, et cetera, you have in the lungs. Certain combination of these findings is what can give you some certainty about this COVID or another type of pathology. That's what they're looking for. That's why also we are expanding to another pathologies.
Okay.
And they detect it, and based on that, literally is the pre-made text, and they can modify it if they want.
Okay, thank you.
Bueno, the presentation has been very clear. I know South America a little bit because I used to be there quite often before COVID. And I think you are targeting a very clear market that is quite big over there. And I don't know which is the situation in terms of competitors.
It's something related to what I mentioned before. The competitors try to get into this, and the first thing is like they cannot reach public but at the beginning because of the pricing. Second is all the things they need to do in order to start working with the hospitals. That's why we have a blue ocean, let's call it. And as I mentioned, we start working with the public healthcare in these hospitals, which is in the southern Mexico. And they start working with us because the friction was totally seamless, totally easy to overcome.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carlo, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
While we give judges a minute, let's bring on our presenter from Jiro.ai to get set up. Hi, Peter.
I'm set.
Great. Another 30 seconds.
Sure.
All set here.
All right, great. And our last presentation today, Jiro.ai, which is using a whole exome sequencing data for in-human AI drug discovery. You have the floor, Peter.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Peter Fedishev. I represent Jiro.ai, which is a biotech startup that works at the intersection between AI, modern digitalized healthcare, good old school physics, and systems biology, in an effort to eradicate chronic diseases. So first of all, chronic diseases is not a small business, as everyone is getting older, and we live through the demographic transition, so there will be even more people at the advanced stages. 6 in 10 people in the US have at least one chronic disease, 4 in 10 have two, so that causes loss of the quality of life, productivity, and eventually death. So curing those diseases is already a multi-trillion-dollar market, and the situation will get actually much worse than it is right now in terms of medical costs. So over the last year with COVID-19, we have seen actually the power of modern biotech. So we got both the vaccines in 1 year, but also a bunch of drugs against COVID. So it happened also with HIV. So as soon as it happened, as it concerns infectious diseases, we're very successful. But when it comes to what is called chronic diseases or complex diseases that are not caused by a single pathogen or a single gene, actually the modern biotech performs in a frustrating manner. So for example, for diabetes type 2, we're still using metformin, which is essentially a French folk medicine from the Middle Ages. So what actually happens is that modern biotech can target almost everything you want, any target. So that's something that you get would most probably work in a pipe, would probably work in vivo, in mice. We can cure any disease in mice these days. And unfortunately, that's something would probably, most probably, stop working at advanced stages of clinical trials, where there are already enormous time and monetary costs. So there are multiple reasons for that. People understand the situation very well. I mean, the top reason is that, of course, we are not mice, humans are not mice. So mice are dead within 3 years, and humans can live up to 60 years without major diseases, which means that if you find a solution that stops the progression of a certain disease in mice, most probably you have that solution already implemented in your genome for free, and you don't need to develop a therapeutic solution for that. So that's why people have been using human data, increasingly using human data for what I would call inhuman drug discovery, because nature is generous to us. We are genetically different, which means that nature runs clinical trials for us all the time. So we have lots of different mutations, and certain mutations are beneficiary for us. So there are people that are less prone to certain diseases, or where certain diseases progress at a slower rate. So what happens is that we have now this consumer genetics, we have tens of millions of samples, we have those gene variants that are associated with your ancestry, race, face shape, eye color, and everything else. Unfortunately, there have been not many information about your health there. So the situation is changing very quickly. We have whole exomes and whole genomes. Yours truly contributed a little bit in the analysis of the data already. With Harvard Medical School, we see that the effects of totally rare mutations that are less frequent than 1 in 1,000 are disproportionately large in terms of the effect on your health. So in order to understand the effects of those rare mutations to your health, to diseases, you have to do something smart because those mutations are totally rare, which means that we're using machine learning in order to predict how rare mutations affect biological processes in your body. And then we go to large biobanks where there are people both with rich electronic medical records and the genetics in order to understand how those rare mutations change biological processes and how those biological processes are related to diseases. So if such system works, you have a tool that actually tells you which genetic variants could be good or bad, and possibly which drugs could be good or bad. So we're living in a very interesting moment in time where this new genetic signal is coming at full scale. So just 6 months ago, UK Biobank, one of the biggest biobanks in the world, had just released 200,000 whole exomes with electronic medical records. By the end of the year, the sponsors of UK Biobank will lose their exclusive access to the 500,000 of Britons with genetics and medical records. In 2 years, there will be a few millions of genotypes. So there is a race now in biotech and in pharma to use this totally novel source of genetic signal and to solve a few major diseases on the way. So we want to, we operate in two ways. We have in-house projects where we have already rich in vivo data as a proof of this platform, and we are focusing on rare on therapeutics that can be tested in rare pediatric diseases and then expand to larger indications. And at the same time, we go to big pharma companies and offer our platform to deduce the modern genetic signals to find novel targets against their diseases of interest. So we have very good traction. So we earned quite some money already. I mean, we have started in December. We will have more than $1 million by this year end in collaborations. And I hope that these collaborations will be further scaled as soon as we get more proprietary data. So the industry understands the value in early stage drug discovery. There are more and more fantastic deals in other companies for target ID, for identifications of the targets rather than in identification of the novel drugs. There are enormous funding rounds already. There are first exits. So for example, Recursion Pharma has just put itself on NASDAQ with a strategy which also involves rare diseases as a clinical proof of concept. So we're working with the best people on different fronts. So for example, we have investors with biotech experience, but also with AI. So for example, Yuri Melnichuk is ex-Google, but also the person who has sold companies back to Google. We're working with the best academics. We're publishing in the best journals. We've just recently got an interview by Scientific American from us. So together, I think we should be able to deliver the superb science that will be translated into revolutionary solutions. So just for request of the jury, we have the business development summary here. We have this one program that would be put into regulatory IND enabling trials. We have collaborations with pharma. Yes, we're raising funds because we want to stay relevant. In 2 years, we want to generate proprietary data, spin out more collaborations, and yes, we want to get into humans in a few years from now. Thank you very much, and I'm ready for your questions. Yeah, and by the way, we want to solve chronic diseases at the full power of the algorithm.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. The competitive environment that you showed looks like both an opportunity and a challenge. It looks like an opportunity because the pathway has been demonstrated that companies doing the kinds of things you're doing have successful exits and they're of interest to big pharma and others. The challenge, I guess, is that it's a competitive market. So how do you respond to the competitive part while taking advantage of the interest?
Well, thank you for the question. I think, yes, it helps to be in this field right now because there is a huge interest. So other people educated our partners in pharma in ways of doing these things. So this is totally true. We are not doing everything. We have, I think, two distinct scientific achievements here. So first, we are leaders in using AI to understand what is called longitudinal biological data. So we follow the same patient as a time. So I'm from physics actually, and we're using this dynamic system approach in order to understand how health trajectories are changing over time, develop these dynamic phenotypes, and use them as targets for our genetic studies. And second, I think we have achieved for the first time the level of denoising in gene expression data, which is required here for pathway level aggregation, that is sufficient to work with whole exome sequencing signal. The signal is new, and we, I know by maybe a time coincidence, where we're having a working tool that is proven to work already because we have generated some in vivo data, and now we are scaling it into less prevalent diseases as the number of genotypes is increasing as we speak. Did I answer to your question?
Yes, yes, thank you so much.
Hi, Peter. How far are you away from developing compounds or enabling the development of compounds for in-human vivo use?
Well, in our flagship project, we have already developed a compound that works in vivo in the model of pediatric rare disease, but also in the model of stroke. So the same compound was identified against a major disease. But then we found a translational path that, if we're successful, if we get IND, should let us do the clinical trials against a rare pediatric disease with hopefully 30 patients only. So all three phases of such clinical trial could be done in the same patient for 1 year per patient. So in a few years total time. So if such a molecule proves to be at least safe and hopefully working in this pediatric rare disease, it could be scaled up at the follow-up round into larger indications. So we believe that this is a smart way. I mean, it's not our invention, of course, but the technology allows you to find drugs that can work in big indications, but can be proven in humans first using rare disease pathway. So in terms of time, if we are fully funded, now we're supporting ourselves by collaborations mostly. So we can fundraise, but we cannot grow. So if we are fully funded, then hopefully, let's say within 2.5 years time from now, we should be able to get IND for the leading project.
Quick follow-up question there. You said that you could design a trial with only 30 patients. Is there a reason that that number is so low? Is it because of the way the compound has been designed, or is there a different reason for that?
This is the regulatory situation in those rare diseases. It's simply because there are not too many patients. There has been an approval in the Batten disease recently. The company that the BioMarin, they did a drug that is intracranially developed, which is not a perfect medical solution, that works only against a single form of the Batten disease. But what most important is that the effect size that they have demonstrated is sufficient to show the effect in 30 patients. So which means that we can show the superiority or the same kind of an effect in this little cohort. So for the regulators, this is okay. If your drug works, you should be able to establish this effect in a small cohort. And what's most important, I mean, the clinical trials costs scaling at the number of patients, which means that the total amount of money required till the registration in this process, in this project, if of course this drug is working, is less than $15 million. So in terms of potential downside, this specific arm of our operation is very cost effective. I mean, that's why Recursion Pharma went public, in my opinion, out of all those richly funded companies, is because they decided to pursue this rare disease route.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, it seems that you are in a very good shape and the company is proceeding forward very well. So my compliment. And my question is related to how far do you think will be the next step of the company? You mean that you're raising 20 million, trying to generate priority data, and how long it would take for you to arrive over there and to change the size and the valuation of the company?
Yeah, I think that the major inflection point here is to reach IND in our flagship project. So that gives you the time scale for about 2 years from now if we are fully funded. So during these 2 years' time, we should be able to get the substantial part of the data which we think is missing and is required to use our algorithm at full power. So which means that in 2 years' time, aside from this IND application, I hope to get at least one high-value collaboration with pharma, I mean, with large milestones, because that would depend on the proprietary data. And I think at least one high-value collaboration and IND would make an inflection point in the biography of our company.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Peter. Now I'm just going to wrap up here after hearing a great presentation. Could you take down your slide share, please? So I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the judges, Ami Isola, Eduardo Calvia, and Ray Johnson for your great questions. And again, everybody's a winner. You, all 19 companies that have made it to this stage of the competition through a very competitive pool. So I just want to say congratulations to you all. We've all been really inspired and impressed by your innovations. For anybody who wants to know more about them, head to our Philo room. go.philo.com/XTC or on our website to learn more. As you heard, they're looking for investors and strategic partners, so reach out if you'd like to get connected. And the Global Finals Series continues tomorrow through next Wednesday, so mark your calendars and then join for our remaining sessions across different categories. And we're going to announce publicly the category winners on July 1st. And everybody's invited to join our finale event, our XTC 2021 Global Finals presented by TechCrunch on July 22nd at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's open and free for the public. So come hear the top contenders pitch, as well as staying for the virtual networking with thousands of investor attendees, as well as corporate executives and startups. And this concludes the XTC Healthcare Category Finals. Thank you for joining today, and we'll see you again tomorrow for the Mobility and Smart Cities Category Finals. Follow us on social media to hear the latest updates, and have a great rest of your day. And judges, I'll see you at deliberation.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.